Hello to all of you. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for our webinar, Wayfinding the San Jose Way. I'm Janet Nelson, the Director of Library Engagement and Solutions for Demco, and I'll be moderating today's session. Before we get started, I just want to go through some housekeeping details, and then I'll introduce our speaker, and she can start today's presentation. On your screens, you should see a chat box on the right-hand side. If you have a question or are having any type of technical issue, please feel free to type something there, and we'll do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can. We'll be taking questions at the end of the session, so if something comes up that you'd like clarification on or want to respond to, you can type it into the chat box, and we'll be compiling all your thoughts and questions and addressing them at the end. If we don't get to your question during the session, we'll be sure to get answers and post them with the recorded webcast after the event. There's also specific contact information available for Ruth and myself that you should see on your screen as well. After the session, you can feel free to email us directly if you have specific questions that we may be able to help with. We're also using Twitter today, and the hashtag is #DemcoIdeas. You should be able to see that hashtag on the side of your screen in the chat box. We are monitoring that feed as well for questions and comments. Just for fun, while I'm doing introductions, we're going to pop a poll question up on your screen to help us better understand today's audience. And our question is, what is the current state of your wayfinding or signage in your library? So we'll give you a few minutes to answer that, and then we'll share those results before we start our program. Now on to introductions. As I mentioned, I'm Janet Nelson, the Director of Library Engagement and Solutions for Demco, and I'm moderating today's session. At Demco, we're always interested in ways to better serve the needs of our customers, and these webinars have been a great way for us to connect and provide additional information around important topics for evolving libraries. Today's presentation is going to provide insight into the concepts of wayfinding and wayshowing, and we'll use the San Jose Public Library System as an example of how these concepts can be put into practice. I'm pleased to introduce you to Ruth Barefoot, who will be our speaker, and she is prepared to provide her insights from years of experience in the library environment, as well as the retail book market. Ruth is with us today as a library consultant who's been involved with many space design and wayfinding projects. She's also the manager of innovations and special projects at the San Jose Public Library. Her experiences there provide unique insight into library space improvements and innovations through her involvement with the transition of the San Jose libraries to their new service model known as the San Jose Way. Ruth is devoted to finding ways to design and improve environments for better learning, and has shared her space design and wayfinding knowledge through presentations at ALA, PLA, and the California Library Association conferences. Before I turn this over to Ruth, I just want to show our poll results. It looks like most of you think that your signage is okay, but could definitely use some improvement. So hopefully you'll be able to find some ways today that we can help you with some of those improvements. So Ruth, we're going to put the controls into your capable hands, and you can get started when you're ready. We seem to be having a bit of a technical difficulty here. Ruth, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for joining this presentation on wayfinding and signage. There's a lot to share. I'm going to be posting a couple of links at the very end for you for your further research, if you like. What I've been asked to do is share some of the why and best practices of where San Jose has gone on these subjects of wayfinding and signage. So let's go ahead and just kind of plow forward. In response to our library bond that passed in 2000, it was $212 million. We did not want to build the same libraries. We wanted to figure out what our service model was doing, how effective it might be. So we started to study it, and we found out that it was out of sync. We needed to really do some very aggressive updating of our traditional service model, basically where people kind of come into the building and they basically take whatever we offer them. So we started to take and switch that all around, saying we would be more customer-centric, and that we would kind of almost stand to the edge of that experience and have a lot more of a customer-driven elements to our service model. So during that investigation, we found a handful of grant-funded key research projects that re-articulated how libraries would be designed in San Jose using improved wayfinding and signage strategies, self-directed customer layout for popular collections that utilized modern retail merchandising methods. We knew that bookstores had something there. We studied Barnes & Noble at the time, and hospitals and Target and Nike that had all consulted, I think, with the best in the business. And we knew that we needed to fold in new technology applications. In addition, our research completely overhauled how our staff operations would be designed as well. So back of house as well would be reinvigorated. And the results were an aggressive new building program that I think many other library systems have taken a look at and kind of taken best practices to share with their architectural groups. So the professionals that we tapped to figure out how we would move forward was Godby Research in 2001 to 2003. And again in 08 and 09. We worked with Envirocell, Paco Underhill's company, in 06 and 07, but we even consulted with him in a very informal chat even before that. We worked with MIG. It's a consulting firm that was customer service, and they brought a lot of their best practices, understanding how to communicate in facilities. So we took that as well. And our library services really figured out how to move from the transactional to more of the relationship, more of the relational. So let's kind of share with you a little bit about how that looked. Basically that customer first approach was the big driver for us. And wayfinding is a comprehensive system of signs, space planning, landmarks, art, color, flooring design, lighting, other architectural elements that assist the visitor or the guest or the customer or the patron, whatever you want to call them, in self-navigating through an environment. These components also shape the idea of place and communicate identity and are referred to as environmental graphics. So it should be a very intuitive experience for customers, allowing them to freely explore the environment while providing information and direction where and when appropriate. So we don't want to inundate them. Also, in creating that wayfinding is an adjacency diagram or a bubble diagram, and I'll be talking about that in the next slide. Branding is very important in how you can create identity to a certain area of your facility. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then signage guidelines help punctuate that. So here we go. So here's basically a bubble diagram, an adjacency diagram. San Jose used this to rebuild 16 branch libraries and build 4 new ones with their $212 million, which was the largest bond of its time. And we really wanted to figure out how people would come into those facilities and how they moved and where they went and why. So you can see how we've organized some of these activities to be clustered together so that customer groups would find it easier to navigate, would be more self-sufficient, because we knew that we would not have a lot of staff to help populate each of these areas. So you can also see where the main service point is in this situation as well. It's kind of a hub in the center, and with easy viewing of each of these areas. It's not squarely in, say, the teen area where you want to hawk over teens, or it's not squarely in the adult collection. It's sort of a hub of the whole space. So I thought that was very interesting as well. We learned a lot through that. Okay, so this is a diagram of Godby helping us understand how our customers are coming into the building and why. And so the Tully branch, they took a look at 2 of our branches and 1 Hayward library, which was still in a very traditional service model layout, and their services were fairly traditional. So we took a look and compared what was happening in each one of these and came up with some assessments on this. So you can see where the first destinations folks were going, how fast they were going. This Tully Community branch is very much a very popular branch for the Vietnamese community in San Jose, and a lot of folks would be coming and going directly left where the Vietnamese collections would go. So we wanted to figure out how those wayfinding pieces would be adjusted. So here's another diagram that shows where people went, what type of people they were, and how long they stayed in certain areas. So you can see the map key that showed basically the cluster of teens, the cluster of children and teenagers were all in that one section. Let's see, another very useful thing to understand is that tech center and the volume of folks coming in and out of that tech center. The fact that it is close to the front door is something to think about when you do a design and when you sign a space. So let's see, here's also some directional, collateral, and book cover signage, and how important Envirocell found these things to be. They really did, they were sort of amazed at how important merchandising, face out of materials, were critical to the customers. And it kind of makes sense. As you kind of come in to a library, you will facilitate your browsing if you can see covers of things. If you are a language speaker, if you are a child, if you are a teen, if you are someone that's looking for fiction and or nonfiction, you're going to be taking a look at some of those face outs, because that is it's a wayfinding. It's a sign. It's a poster that you are going to be using to navigate in the space. So I thought that was very interesting, where 15% noticed signage at San Jose, and that merchandising was fairly critical. What was interesting here too is Envirocell also gave fairly high marks in 6 areas of their signage best practices. for our 2 branches in San Jose, but the traditional model was not as flexible or easy in their navigation. So signage hierarchy, we'll talk more about that, but less is more, that there was a lot of clutter, and we'll show you some pictures of that, although I'm sure that you have examples of your own on the less is more, the way that we clutter our environments with a lot of signage. Concise signage, easy to read while moving, along patron sightlines, and odd shapes and sizes were all fairly consistent in the San Jose areas, but I'm going to show you examples of how that was. And that in-depth signage in wait areas, I'm going to show you a bit about that, and that in ways that it can be improved as well. So here we go. So here's less is more. Do you see on the countertops and the desks there, the amount of clutter on the desks? So you want to try to remove the barrier between the staff person that's helping the customer, so that it's very clean and clear. You can see the amount of stuff that's making a barrier in between that. Also, position in-depth signage in wait areas. You can see that a flyer is on a table, which makes sense, but we can actually make that even more of a higher a rating if we take a look at the use of that flyer itself that's being posted on the tabletop there. And you see over here sort of the clutter of the amount of signage in the wait areas, but you know, what do you read first, and which one should you read or not bother to read? So take a look at all of that in your own libraries. Okay. My screen will not advance. Oh, there you go. Just very slow. Here we go. So you can see how you keep it concise and easy to read while moving. The end of range signs, you want to have a good font, and you want to have only the most critical information on those end of range signs. Envirocell really liked our banners. And we had the words, you know, sideways. We didn't stick with all horizontal. So you want to get that odd shapes and sizes into your signage. You definitely want to make it more of the experience rather than strictly go here, big arrow pointing down, or stop here for this and that. Also, creating a sense of movement was very popular with Envirocell. And you can see how more than just the end of range signs are at work here, but you're encouraging people to enjoy their library and explore and discover and learn and all of that. You really want to enjoy the spaces that you're in. Here we have basically the specific recommendations for a traditional library, and I wanted you to see this for your own, just to double check. And I use this even to double check in San Jose to see where we can tighten up, because to remove yourself from a traditional approach of signage and wayfinding is very difficult. It happens over years. And so you'll want to kind of go back and double check every so often so you can tighten up and move forward in a concerted way. So here we have signage needs improvement to conduct a triage to eliminate extraneous signage. So eliminate signage that's outdated, clean up the clutter of signs and brochures, especially at the front desk, design a section for signs that stand out from the walls, and all signs could use an updated design, a look. And so I'll be talking a little bit about how we kind of conquered a little bit of that. You want to use fixtures and signage to brand adult and children's sections. You actually want to almost bring in a polished look. So along the same lines, teenagers need defined, even isolated space. More computers and more versatile computers would be useful. So when people sit down at a computer, if it only does, say, word processing, this was what we did in San Jose years ago, and we got away from the fact that computers would be doing a specific thing that we really valued and wanted to make sure that people just could come in and do you know, type up a resume and type up, you know, specific things, papers, reports, when pretty much we wanted every single PC to do that. We wanted every single PC to have internet. So we tried to really work it so that no matter which PC people would be sitting down at, it would be able to do everything. Because that's what you're selling, is that, you know, that PC can do everything. More computers and more versatile computers, okay. Librarians at Weeks needed to emerge, you know, basically get out from behind the desk. Now, many library systems across the United States and Canada are embracing more of a single service point model, or at least taking away the numbers of desks that are specific to a specific branded area. Whereas, you know, even in academic libraries, public libraries, they're taking a look at not having staff do only one thing at one desk, and then you put up a sign saying ask your questions at the other desk because this one is closed, that kind of thing. So we're getting away from that traditional approach to service models, and that's a really good move, because folks that are coming through the doors needing help, they do not want to be caught in our system and the way we kind of have organized our staff training, you might say. It really should be a lot more flexible and nimble customer service no matter which area you go to. So more seating would be useful for patrons, and the front desk should be redesigned to appear more welcoming. So here I wanted to show you a before and after, and literally both pictures are in color. You'd think that the left was not in color. Can you imagine? So people would come through that door and that is what they'd see. Imagine how far we have come when we put color in there and pop and get our materials face out and take away the clutter of signage. When people can kind of come in and enjoy what we have, and then if they still have a question, then they look for staff. So you can see how getting staff out of that first 10 steps is a critical step for the San Jose service model. And I think that it was a big win for us. This is one of our branches, Willow Glen branch. I really like the way that it shows signage at its best for San Jose Public, where we're using materials to show off as part of the wayfinding. So signage is integrated into the experience rather than just people getting pointed to it, right? So we want to refine the experience for people. We want to have a more intuitive and seamless approach. We want to get away from having to have signage in multiple languages. In San Jose, we have 4 major languages at work: Vietnamese, Chinese, Spanish, and English, which basically are driving. We have many more languages that are quite strong in our neighborhoods as well. So what we want to do is create more branding that helps people move throughout our buildings. And we want self-direction because we want people to feel empowered. We want the tougher questions, not where are the picture books. So let's see. So here I wanted you to take a look at this shot. It's showing you a little bit of the signage hierarchy where there's primary signs, secondary signs, tertiary signs, collateral signs. And sometimes tertiary and collateral are almost synonymous in my mind. It's the smaller stuff, the stuff that changes a lot. So here we go. A primary sign is basic major areas serving major customer groups in your facilities. Now if you're in school libraries, you'd want to look at, say, student commons or research labs, that kind of thing. In public libraries, teens, children's, quiet rooms, those are major, more major. So we'll have examples of all of that. Secondary signs are the end of range signs. That's an example. An end of range sign or a gondola sign, or as you see in this photo, a pyramid sign, where that little sign up above on the pyramid shows new books. So here I wanted to draw your attention to 2 primary signs being fairly close together here. Your children's sign and then your family place sign. They're both primary because they are stating a larger umbrella of activities are encouraged here. And I want you to also see the amount of color on the floor and the amount of just the different things that are kind of low for children. When you, one of the biggest mistakes you can do is to sign an area for kids and not include the whole environment. If you have a toddler, they're not going to see a sign that is 15 feet up. Okay, so that as an example is what you want to kind of take into account. Okay, so collateral signs are program flyers, calendars, brochures, or temporary in nature. Think of it as temporary signs, signs that are changing a lot. Often made available for take-home within these environments. Also, you might think of a digital sign being, put up somewhere where you are removing a lot of the clutter of the collateral signage and digitizing it. It would still be collateral signage because you're often changing those slides on the digital signage. Okay, so here's a map of the signage hierarchy at work in the Tully branch that we saw earlier. And as you come through, you see a primary sign as you come right into the door, and another one saying probably new books, another one saying information on the right-hand side. You see another one down the lane, probably to the right, saying, say, children's or family place or teens area, teens, and then to the left, some of those big banner signs. So that would be like fiction, nonfiction, languages. right? Those are your primary signs. And if you take a look at the secondary signs, what are your secondary? Your secondary are the smaller ones within those larger areas. So say fiction for kids, fiction for adults, right? Those are your secondary signs. And then your tertiary signs in this map would be, say, a study area, a classroom, or a bathrooms, you know, those kinds of things. Okay, so here are some definitions. Just to kind of share a little bit about this, because it's hard for people to get their head around some of this and to own up to a lot of it. Wayfinding, you want to intuitively move people from the entrance through the building in a very seamless way. It's more than just signage or branding. It's architectural pieces, it's color, you know, all of that. Primary signage is the larger key signs identifying major areas. Secondary, smaller signs within the specific areas. Tertiary, less significant signage such as storage rooms, or legally required signage such as ADA or the Braille signage. Collateral, the temporary signage, and also technology. I've added this one because it's the use of computer screens, flat screen monitors, flat screen digital signage, and all of that. So you definitely want to use as much as you can to help people wayfind. So here's some examples. Can you pick out which ones are secondary, which ones are primary? So the library sign outside of the building is a really good one. You want to definitely take a look at the outside of your buildings. Are you celebrating that you're a library? Do you have library big and bold? Some people want to have, you know, San Jose Public Library, Rose Garden branch all in one, and that means that the sign has to be fairly small. I would say if you can revert to larger impact signs, go with library big and have the naming of the facility closer to the front doors on the exterior of the wall. Something like that. So kind of play your cards right and get that bling where you really, really need it and know it will pay off big. Branded signage within your facility to like check out. If you have self-check, we went from express check to self-check to check out. We went from let's see, we went from information desk, or no, reference desk to information desk to information to info. So there's certain evolutions of where we're going with some of these signs in San Jose. Definitely play into it. Here's examples of primary and secondary branded signage in the San Jose Way model. You can see that there's a digital sign that we use down on the lower left. And we have those basically like 13, I think they've crept to a little bit more, like 18 slides with 3 to 4 seconds per slide. And some of those slides are getting fairly cluttered with a lot of words. What we learned by through our experts of EnviroCell and MIG consulting firms, they told us don't beat people over the head with a lot of information. Go clean and concise. Have movement, have color, stick with color coding. So what we learned with not just our flyers and our brochures and our digital signs is that for programs they would be a certain color. You know, I forget what it is now, but let's say it's let's say it's blue, and then classes would be orange, and events would be purple. So stick with sort of a framework that at a glance people say, oh, a class. You know what I mean? So things like that, it really pays off if you can do that. Let's see, so here's some more collateral. Here's some collateral and tertiary sign examples. Remember when I said the end of range signs would be very good to have? Well, the one on the top left is a computer, an end of range computer. Basically it's our catalog sign. But we have our catalog computers doing a lot more now, and you can see what they're doing. We want those to be wayfinding because it should be one-stop shopping as much as possible. And so as staff are floating on the floor, they can take people to these customer stations and help folks navigate through what is at their fingertips, and to be able to feel free and comfortable to come back the next time and go straight back to one of these and ask their own questions. So we're building a self-directed service model this way. You can see the directory has been very useful for us. The flyer on the top right, the calendar, we're actually moving away from calendars because of the use of phones and pocket technology. It's just huge. So calendars are kind of slipping away from us, not totally, but they're doing it. Here we have wayfinding and signage examples of where you can have multiple, basically multiple customers shop multiple libraries. And this is something to really remember as people are going from branch to branch within your system or from neighboring library systems into yours, or from one school library into another school library. They need to have a good sense of how things work. And I like this sign here because second floor, big arrow, these are the items. And look at how clean and simplified that is. Your first instinct is to want to put 15 different things up there and maybe a couple of messages like, you know, bathrooms are not up there, they're only on the first floor, or something bizarre like that. So don't clutter, don't try to do too much with a single piece of signage. It's really very effective. You want to encourage the frequent visitor, you want to help the rare visitor as much as possible. So here's another cool shot. I really like this one because they've remembered the flooring and how critical that is for wayfinding. And if you take a look at this, this single service point is over to the right. It's not obtrusive. It's about the material and the areas inside. I love also the way that the very signage, kids and family, just has so much pop and definition, and it encourages a playful attitude. So that's really wonderful. And also take a look at the kids area and how the color coding is different from the neighboring library space. It's a different palette so that you feel like you're crossing a threshold, which is wonderful. You want to do that. So all wonderful on that. Wayfinding has definitely shifted to more of a customer driven approach, and also a lot more playfulness, and you know, just less is more. So I think that's a really nice step that wayfinding has taken in the public libraries as well as the school libraries. Branded spaces are readjusted to the customer's needs now. So we have a lot of color going in. We have different types of, say, the walls, the lighting, just different elements within these branded spaces are taking on a wayfinding piece that is separate from the rest of the library, and sort of seamlessly sells. Also, lead initiatives drive some of our decisions. The signage, I know in San Jose we're being asked to cut way back on printing calendars and flyers, and so now we actually don't print out flyers to go home with people like we usually did. We now do a calendar. We actually encourage people to download the calendar or to just have it as an app. And that's another thing, to have apps as much as possible for different things. So we've backed off of, in San Jose, large, expensive, and permanent signage for environments that are in flux. What I mean is, like, say, our technology spaces. We want them to be a little bit more flexible. So using more digital signage is really cool, or having a broader wording on some of our areas that are still changing a lot. We have gotten rid of circulation. That was a big sign that we had in some of our earliest buildings that we built. We have not put in circulation as the big primary sign anymore. And it's also internal speak. It's a staff term. We now go with just check out for that area, and information or info is now the signage that goes in for the desks or the desk. We've incorporated more color in our signage. We've removed old lingo, like I've mentioned. We've improved staff training for our collateral signage. And you think you've done it, you've trained enough, you haven't. You have to revisit it almost on an annual basis to make sure that you can help steer people in the right direction. You can also promote ways to do this by buying the fixtures and replacing out the fixtures that they will be using, so you can have the conversations at those times and also narrow the number of fixtures that you use. And fixtures, I mean by, say, a flyer holder that's on a tabletop or on a countertop, or on slat wall. You know, different holders that hold your collateral signage. And we add technology whenever we can now. So that's really cool. We've moved to a single service point model, which means we've removed the other extraneous desks, and we've opened up the floor plan. And now it's just, I think, a little bit easier. We've removed old furniture from our floor plans. Old signage, we have to get to more of our community information bulletin board. We usually had that first thing as you would come through the door. Well, now we've sunk it further into the building because it's not all about just the community bulletin board. When people come into the library, we want them to see what the library is offering, and the community bulletin board is after that, is usually by the community room, by the bathrooms, on the edge of this space, you might say. We've added information or info to the signage program guidelines, balancing staff convenience with customer heritage signage specifications. We had some signage that would be manipulative, right, for some of our gondolas signage. We could take off a plate and put on a new plate. Well, we found out that customers were taking home souvenirs. So we had to definitely take a look at that. And also some of the signage that was outside of our buildings, people would be in certain areas of our neighborhoods, they would be taking home part of our library signage as, you know, little souvenirs as well, like the I in library. You'd be amazed. So we'd have to get the specs to be a lot hardier, and we'd have to place the sign in a way, or even do a perforated panel, and that would get that sign to be not you know, ruined at all. We responded to cultural technology demands. We know that people want fast and easy and in their pocket. So developing apps has been a critical component to our signage as well. Okay, so signage and branding are definitely one. They are merged. You want to have it integral and working together because one enhances the other. You want a really solid wayfinding and signage guidelines to be integrated. So wayfinding, you know, as I shared, it's taking a look at your bubble diagram, your adjacency diagram, and do you have that ease of movement for customer groups? Do you have a signage hierarchy at work? So take a look at some of those things. If you have great wayfinding, it reduces the need for signage. Totally does. So and busy customers, non-library users, language speakers, children are not that reliant on signs. As Envirocell researched, people are looking at signage even in some great environments like some of the libraries in San Jose. They're only looking at signage 15% of the time. So we may think that if you have a sign there that people are going to read it, most often they don't. We found that staff are the best communicators in our environments. So I was asked, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? Well, less is more. That you can have as many flyers posted in holders, littering desks and counters and tables, and it doesn't make any difference. Customers, they go zonkers and read that many fewer. 1, 2, 3, that's it. Stick with less is more. So, and a signage package flow must flow from zone to zone. And if you're putting in a signage package, you definitely want to put in all the primary signs first, then the secondary. If you only have money to do one component, do all the primary first, then the secondary and tertiary. You know, kind of stair-step it for your implementation plan. So there you go. And that is it, folks. That's all I have. I can take your questions now.
We do have some questions, Ruth. Real quick before we get started into those, we're going to throw up one more poll question. So this question is, after learning more about wayfinding, what are your plans for updates in your library? So you can take a minute to answer that. And then we'll start into questions here. So we had a couple questions around your comments about languages. One of them was, how does using only one language impact customer experience when you have multiple language speakers within your area? And then kind of along that same line, just someone who's clarifying, did you say that you avoided using more than one language in a sign or flyer?
Those are great questions, and we wrestled with that for, I want to say, 5, 6, 7 years. We definitely have one branch that has been sort of the hub of everything, every Spanish speaker. But we find that Spanish speakers are throughout our whole library system. They attend to every one of our branches. And so to have dual signage at every one of our branches will isolate a lot of the other language speakers, because we can't have Chinese, do we have Mandarin signage up? Do we have Vietnamese, signage up? Do we have Hindi? Do we have, Korean? Where do we stop on that? Let's say that you are in an environment that is pretty strictly down the center, English and Spanish. You could do dual signage where you have children's and then the name for children's in Spanish. You could do dual. But to me, what we did is we wanted to figure out what is it that San Jose Public Library is responsible for. And we wanted to help the lifelong learners embrace the English. And so we stuck with that, but our collateral signage, the smaller signage, we went towards more of the multiple languages, where and when they were most effective. So in some of our branches we have high Mandarin, and then they can have flyers, collateral, digital signage that are in that, but their primary signs still, stick with the English treatment. So does that answer?
I think that sounds good, Ruth. A lot of good suggestions about how to handle that difficult situation. Something that might tie into that, there was a question about whether you were color coding your adult versus your youth sections.
Color coding. Color coding in what way? The sections themselves?
They didn't really specify, but I'm guessing that it could either be, the way I've seen it done in the past is like creating a space, like the children's area might be the red area and the teen area might be the blue area, or sometimes it's done through the signage itself. Did you do anything like that in San Jose?
Well, we do have a branding color palette for each of these major areas, but we didn't kind of break it down. Let's say that you're in a school library and you really need to function very quickly for certain age groups. You could do a color coding there. It would be very appropriate to do it there. But we find that in public libraries, staff or customers, they go anywhere they want, right? And if you have age ranges in children's areas, you find that it doesn't apply for some people, or some people, they find it confining. So with kids areas, you want to be careful about how you color code. With adult areas, if you use branding for the whole adult area, that would be a smart way to do it, because then people kind of feel like they know how to browse that whole space. When the branded color kind of stops and it goes to another one, they feel that they're stepping over a threshold into another service area. And I think that is really good intuitive wayfinding to help your customers. So use color to help people get an impression of how you are grouping services and collections.
I think that helps a lot. Different ways to think about how you can use color in your wayfinding scheme. So another question around how did you come up with the new lingo? So talking about circulation to checkout and that type of thing.
You know what? We had some focus groups that were non-library users, and we had them talk to us regarding how they looked at information, how they were learning, how did they develop their life, their self-directed learning. And so we took a look at that vocabulary. We started to really learn that new vocabulary, and it was very important during our Godby research phases early on in 01 to 03. And we also just continued to listen to customers. and to staff. And the staff that were in, basically getting away from the formality of the internal signage naming, like the reference desk, the accounts desk, circulation desk. We started to see that it wasn't making that much sense to the customer base. So we started to kind of clean up our vocabulary and make it more customer-centric. What is it that you're trying to do? Okay, we'll call it that. Information, basically.
Perfect.
Check out, and so on.
Okay, so some questions around, do you have any suggestions for smaller libraries with limited budgets?
Oh, absolutely. And I've dealt with this off and on through the years as well. What we have done is you can use from just a, online, you can get some vinyl lettering and some plastic that has been, just basically some plastic panels, and have those cut to size and use those. Put the vinyl letters, have them floated on with kind of a, use some water and a squeegee, and have that all, put on. You can have a more of a concise, clean look if you do that. We did that just to check out some of our signage ideas back in the 90s and early 90s, in fact. And so you'll want to evolve, but first you have to kind of do your homework and check out some of your theories for each one of your areas, each one of your spaces.
That's a great idea, to do a little bit of experimenting first before you have a big investment in anything permanent. But certainly that's something that looks a little better than some of the paper signs that you sometimes see used throughout libraries when people just aren't quite sure.
Right. Oh, and there was another easy thing that I've seen off and on in my travels when I consult. People have painted an upper soffit one color that is above a certain section of the library, so they have used that as wayfinding, and then I've seen that being popped up with stencil lettering being put either in a kind of a curve or in a vertical fashion, saying teens going up the wall. So you can go with fairly cheap, like paint is very, very affordable.
We use that one quite a bit, just telling people that, getting different colors into your spaces using paint. I mean, the paint doesn't cost any more if you're using a color, so that's another really, really great piece of advice. So we are almost out of time here, so I want to share back our poll results quick. So it kind of looks like a really mixed bag there on, it looks though that most people are considering doing something, or we do have a few that are unsure, so it's about a third, and a third, with a few with no plans.
Wow.
So a lot of things going on there. So I want to do some quick closing comments here. We're going to wrap this up. We'd really like to thank Ruth for sharing her insights and tips on the importance of wayfinding in your library. We hope that everyone was able to take away a few new ideas to try. There was some great discussion, and we appreciate all of you sharing your time with us. You will be receiving a survey at the end of the webinar to let us know how we did. Please take a few moments to fill this out. We'd love your feedback so that we can make these sessions even better in the future. Feel free to comment on other topics that you'd like more information on or speakers you'd like to hear from, so we can consider building these into some of our programs going forward. We've received great feedback from our previous webinars, and that's really helped us to focus on the topics that you're most interested in. Tomorrow you'll receive a follow-up to this presentation that will include a link to this webcast. So if you missed something or just want to review, you can go back and refresh yourself on the presentation or share with your colleagues. Next week you'll be receiving a second email that will include resources such as the slides and a Q&A log that documents and answers the questions that came up today. Again, thank you for joining us today. We'll be back on October 29th at 2 p.m. Central Time with Tony Buzzio, who will present Common Core, Partnership Instruction and Advocacy in the Elementary School Library. And soon you'll be able to register for our November 5th webinar with architect Dan Meehan from HBM Architecture, who will discuss new approaches to existing spaces. So watch the Demco website for additional upcoming programming, or check out the webinars that we currently have available on demand that you can watch at your convenience. We hope that you'll consider joining us for future events. Again, so glad you joined us, and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.